Lord of Mystery. The Return of the Stars Chapter 171 to 180. Silence. No sound. Leonard opened his mouth slightly and looked at the blond young man in front of him who seemed to be indulging in sadness. For the first time, he felt that fate was so ruthless that such a person appeared in front of him. The poem that should have belonged to him tonight was squeezed away by half by others. He seemed to become eclipsed, reflecting the brilliance of others. Alas! A heavy sigh came out of Leonard's throat. He looked complicated and stared at Hasta for a long time, whispering, "Backland is worthy of being the city of hope and miracles in the world." "How about my poem?" "Very good." Leonard nodded. Seeing that the other party did not seem to be proud of it, he asked curiously, "When and under what circumstances did you create this poem?" "Just now, when you were chanting the poem." Click. It seemed that something cracked due to the impact of external force. Leonard looked down and saw that it was his fragile and sensitive heart. "That's great." Leonard showed an incomprehensible smile on his face, and said seriously, "Hasta, your talent for poetry is really good, you are very suitable to be a poet. I'm just an amateur, writing poetry is not my specialty." "Who?" A gust of wind blew, and it seemed to sweep away something. Leonard looked into the distance. Oh, it turned out that his heart had turned into powder and followed the breeze away. "What's wrong with you?" The concerned words made Leonard retract his dull eyes and forced a smile on his face, saying with a smile, "It's okay. I just suddenly thought of something clearly." "What's the matter?" "There is no need to be too obsessed with some invisible things in life." "A very reasonable sentence, you are worthy of being an excellent poet." The smile on Leonard's face became more intense, so thick that it couldn't be dissolved, just like the thick gouache applied by the clown during the performance. It's a pity that he is not a clown sequence, otherwise he should have completely digested the potion. After a long time, Leonard, who had drunk several glasses of Southwell beer, finally calmed down. After thinking for a while, he asked tentatively, "Hasta, how do you think you should write a good poem?" "Learn to hit the enter key. Split a complete sentence into 2 or 3 paragraphs, and then say some fragmented words that sound vague but seem to make sense. Then mix them together in 2s and 3s, and finally learn to leave some blanks." Hasta silently complained in his heart, "I think a good poem should be sincere and sincere. The rich emotions of human beings are our greatest weapon, not affectation and singing old tunes in childhood." Hasta gave a pretty good suggestion. "Poems that can move people are truly worth singing. Emotions, use sincerity to infect others, resonate with readers and listeners, and let them immerse themselves in it and cannot extricate themselves for a long time. As for the piling up and embellishment of words, it is just the skin of a poem. The overall structure of the poem is the skeleton, and only emotions are the real soul. Many poets only have a gorgeous appearance, but do not have an outstanding soul. Of course, sometimes they are ugly even in appearance, and even their skeletons are gone, like a pool of mud on the ground. As for the soul, the shiny black, stinking sewage next to it is it. Hasta, you really should write poetry, and really should let more people appreciate your work." Leonard's eyes almost lit up. As the conversation deepened, he felt more and more that the blond young man in front of him was a genius in writing poetry. "Compared to writing, I am better at satire and criticism." Hasta was very self-aware of this. Seeing that Leonard was going to persuade him again, Hasta smiled and said, "Emotion is the source of poetry. If you insist on it, you will only lose the beauty of poetry and become a tool for poetry." Okay. Leonard thought this sentence made sense, but he really felt sorry for Hasta. If he had this kind of poetry talent, he would wake up laughing in his dreams. As the two continued to talk, someone not far away talked about the matter of the star believers. Now as things ferment, the topic of the star believers is no longer limited to the extraordinary world, and even ordinary people know a little about it. In their view, this is a new cult organization or a terrorist organization. All the major events that happened in Backland recently were caused by these star believers. Leonard and Hasta, who listened quietly for a while, looked unhappy. The two smiled at each other, and Leonard deliberately said, "Star believers. It seems that there is a popular activity in Backland to find their traces recently." After all, the reward is very generous. Even the police station has posted a reward. As long as you find the traces of star believers or related information, you can get a considerable reward. Hasta also joined the topic. Do you know anything about star believers? Not very clear, how about you? Me, I don't know much either. I just came to Backland recently, and I don't know much about what happened here. Leonard smiled and pretended to know nothing. Hasta thought for a while and said, I heard that there are star believers appearing recently, and I don't know what he looks like. He should look pretty good. Have you seen him? I've only heard of him. He's said to be good-looking and gentle. Oh, if I have a chance, I'd like to meet that believer in the stars. Leonard turned his empty wine glass and asked curiously, why are you interested in him? I'm just curious about what kind of person can be protected by the stars. That's not a good thing. Leonard thought about it and decided to remind Mr. Hasta, who was very eloquent. Now even the people of the 7 major churches are looking for believers of the stars. It can be seen that this is an extremely evil and dangerous organization. We ordinary people should not have any contact with them. Extremely evil and dangerous? Hasta narrowed his eyes and smiled. But I haven't heard of those believers of the stars doing anything terrible? That's just the appearance. Maybe the recent murders are caused by them. But didn't the police station find the murderer? How do you know it was done by believers of the stars? Leonard laughed and said, I'm just guessing, it may not be true, but one thing is certain, stay away from them, there is absolutely no harm. That's right. Hasta raised his glass and clinked it with Leonard's glass, and smiled. We ordinary people should really stay away from them. Wait a minute, I'll go to the bathroom. Leonard drank another glass of wine, and finally couldn't stand the swelling in his abdomen, so he got up and went to the bathroom. Believers of the stars. Hasta murmured, ordered another glass of fruit wine, and drank it in small sips. He was thinking whether to find out the fake one who pretended to be a believer of the stars. If he was allowed to do whatever he wanted, it would ruin the reputation of the stars. Although he didn't care much, he still felt a little uncomfortable. He had done nothing, but he had to bear the blame for the chaos in Backland. People who blasphemed the gods should be punished. After a while, Leonard came briskly from the bathroom, and then asked the bartender for 3 glasses of Southwell beer and a few snacks. Looking at him, he was probably going to drink until late tonight. Hasta took out his pocket watch and took a look. It was already past 11 o'clock. We had been chatting until late tonight, and it was time to go back and rest. After all, Backland was not very peaceful recently, so it was better not to stay outside for too long. Hasta, do you want to drink more? Hearing that Leonard was going to treat him to a drink, Hasta held up the half-drunk fruit wine in his hand and shook his head, saying, I've already drunk a lot tonight. I have to go home and rest later. Let's do it another day. Leonard felt a little pity and sighed and walked over. Hasta glanced at him and said, You seem to have something bothering you tonight? Why do you say that? You look like you're going to drink until dawn. Generally, people who drink alone late at night have a lot of worries. Only in this way can they drink a bellyful of wine. That's a good point. Leonard did not state his true situation, but talked about the difficulties he had when he first came to Backland. For example, the housing prices were too high, he was unfamiliar with the place, and he was busy with work, etc. Hasta listened quietly, and after accompanying Leonard to finish the glass of wine, he got up and said goodbye. Before leaving, he told Leonard that if he wanted to find him for a drink in the future, he could come here to try his luck, or tell the waiter here. Leonard said that if he had time in the future, he would come here to drink with him, and then watched Hasta leave in a carriage. Without a great drinking companion, drinking is not enough. Leonard sighed and thought of Klein. This friend who had been friends since Tingen was good in many ways, but his alcohol tolerance was average, so it was difficult to drink with him. Well, Klein's poetry level seemed to be average, right? Sure enough, people like Mr. Hasta tonight who have both talent and appearance are only a minority among the minority. Leonard drank silently until the bar closed at dawn, and then he was ready to leave. Before leaving, the waiter told him that Mr. Hasta had paid for his drinks in advance. Tisk, someone invited me to drink when I just came to Backland. I am indeed a very charming person. Leonard was quite moved by this, stopped a carriage, and returned to St. Samuel Church in the North District. Street, Samuel's Church. When Leonard came back with a smell of alcohol, many people were waiting for him, including Klein, who came with the Nighthawks to report the results of last night's battle. There was no news all night, and we thought you were in danger. It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back. Leonard Mitchell, you are a real warrior, and you have successfully proved to everyone that you are a qualified member of the Red Gloves. After a round of greetings and affirmations, Leonard, who was already a little light-headed because of drinking too much, became more and more light-headed. Klein supported his arm and let him sit on a bench to rest. Smelling the strong smell of alcohol on Leonard, Klein frowned slightly and said, "You smell of alcohol, what did you do last night?" Acting as a bait is a very dangerous thing. After Leonard got away, he didn't hide quickly and drank all night. I really don't know whether to say he is brave or ignorant and fearless. Leonard glanced at the other members of the Red Gloves team who also wanted to know what happened last night, cleared his throat, and said, "I was teleported to a bar last night. Because of the negative effects of the seal, I didn't dare to walk around, let alone return to the church directly. I could only choose that bar as my place of residence temporarily. At that time, I was cold and my whole body was cold, so I drank some strong liquor to relieve the symptoms. I didn't want to drink too much at first, but then I met an interesting drinker and had a very good chat with him. I drank a lot without realizing it. The drinker went home to rest after drinking, and I stayed in the bar until the bar closed at dawn, and then I took a carriage back." Leonard roughly recounted what happened last night, which satisfied the curiosity of the people around him. Klein thought for a while, but still didn't ask Leonard how much he spent on drinks last night. He had seen the prices in Backland, and the drinks in the bar would definitely be much more expensive than those outside. Leonard drank all night and probably drank up his weekly salary. The captain of the Red Gloves team who was in charge of Leonard also thought of this problem. He smiled and patted Leonard on the shoulder. "Don't worry, the expenses of going out to perform tasks can be reimbursed." "Thank you, Captain." Leonard smiled. The cost of a night's drinks. Judging from the price of drinks in the bar he saw last night, it should be no problem to quote 50 gold pounds for a night's drinks. After all, they didn't know that they drank the cheaper Southwell beer most of the time last night, and they didn't know that their drinks had been paid for. Earning 50 gold pounds for nothing is indeed a good development. He has already decided to go to the Brave Bar again in a few days when the wind is not so tense. He must buy back the money for a meal. Leonard, who has completed his mission, went to the room to rest with Klein. On the way, Klein briefly introduced Leonard to the results of last night's battle. Their East District Night Watcher team, in cooperation with a team of Punishers, surrounded and killed 5 Beyonders, one of whom was actually a Sequence 6. The ambush at Savella's Square on the other side was even more amazing. They surrounded and killed 2 Sequence 5s, and almost left a Sequence 4 demigod behind, which completely shocked the Beyonders hiding in the dark. As for the identities of the 2 Sequence 5 Beyonders, the church did not choose to make them public. According to a member of the Red Gloves team, one of them might be from the Fussac Empire, and the other was a member of the Church of Knowledge and Wisdom. Leonard listened silently and said with emotion, "A Sequence 4 demigod actually came out to target me. Fortunately, I ran fast enough, otherwise it would be terrible. You still have to be careful next time. There must be more people spying on me last night. For example, the Aurora Society, which is always known for its boldness, has not sent anyone to take action." Klein reminded. "Strange, they can be so patient this time, which is really rare." Leonard also felt strange. In his impression, the Aurora Society is a terrorist organization that is fearless. They should also be looking for the Star's believers, but why is there no movement at all? Could it be that they have the wisdom to see through the trap? That's really a bit scary. After sending Leonard back to his room, Klein left first. He came to St. Samuel's Church this time on business, so he didn't have much time to reminisce. Leonard went back to his room and lay on the bed, ready to have a good sleep, but was disturbed by the voice deep in his heart. "The person you talked to last night was a little unusual. Are you referring to Mr. Asta? Does he have any special identity?" Leonard's sleepiness was dispelled a lot. I don't know, I can't see through it. But it is because I can't see through him that he may have problems. Old man, even you can't see through it, I just have some doubts. What do you doubt? Could that person be the one who favors the night? The one who makes me unable to see through, except for having a higher status than me, only has the secrets of the night. Leonard's sleepiness disappeared, and he became energetic. Curiously, old man, what sequence were you in your life? In your life? Brad, I'm not dead yet, ahem, it was a slip of the tongue. If you want to know what level of existence I am, then hurry up and improve your strength. Backland is not simple. A sequence 7 is just a slightly more powerful ant. Seeing that the old man didn't want to reveal this issue, Leonard brought the topic to the issue of the night blessed. No wonder we had a great conversation when we first met. It turns out that he is the goddess, favored one. I just have doubts. As long as he doesn't have any ill intentions toward me, don't explore his identity. After all, it's rare to have a friend I can talk to. You are stupid, but your luck seems to be pretty good. Leonard shouted. Old man, can you speak properly? There was a tut from deep inside, as if he was disdainful of this. Do you still remember the negative effects of that cloak of night? It's easy to encounter incredible events if you walk around randomly? Perhaps your meeting last night was an incredible event. Is it really so accurate? Leonard was completely shocked by these words. But when I think about it carefully, I find it really incredible. I was just looking for a bar to drink, but I happened to meet someone who was slightly better than me in terms of appearance and talent. Recalling the scene last night, Mr. Hester walked out of the VIP room in the bar, which meant that he came to the Brave bar earlier than he did. Judging from his tone, he was a regular visitor to that bar, so there was no possibility that he was squatting there to wait for him. Leonard thought carefully for a long time and agreed with the old man's guess. It is truly incredible that there is a man in this world whose looks and talents are better than his own. It turns out that the person pretending to be a follower of the stars is you, Leonard. In the Palace of Stars, Hester accurately found the person pretending to be a believer in the stars, Leonard Mitchell, by spying on the relevant fate. He drank too late last night and slept until noon. As soon as he came back, it wasn't until after lunch that he returned to his room and entered the Hall of Stars to start exploring his destiny. Unexpectedly, the person finally found out was Leonard. Last night, I had a drink with Leonard and talked about the disciples of the stars. The two of them had so many different ideas. Thinking about it now, everything seems very interesting. Hester chuckled a few times, and then thought about Leonard's intention of pretending to be a believer in the stars. He should have learned about the existence of the stars believers from the church, and he had only recently come to Backland from Tingen. Combined with recent events, it is not difficult to infer that Leonard's disguise as a disciple of the stars was the instruction from the Church of the Goddess of the Night. The purpose of doing this should be to attract the true believers of the stars. It's a good strategy, but it's a pity that Backland only has furs, a believer in the stars. It's impossible for you to fish a completely flat fish out of the water. Hester murmured, not wanting to take any measures against Leonard for the time being. Perhaps it was fate. Last night, I just went to the Brave Bar and met Leonard, who had just arrived in Backland not long ago. Leonard's identity card in the Tarot Society is the star, and he symbolizes the stars. There is a connection between the stars, and he pretends to be a believer in the stars. Hester wouldn't mind making Leonard a true disciple of the stars if given the chance. Making a fake show and doing it for real is also a good development. Hester thought for a while, then glanced at the twinkling stars in the sky above his head. Except for the high-dimensional overlooker who is still looking at the sea, the other stars are quiet. Hester just stared at the high-dimensional overlooker for a while, then moved to another small point of light. Since the last time the white crystal eyeball was shot down from the sky by the Lord of Storms and landed on the border of the Republic of Intis, he no longer paid attention to it. Looking at it now, I saw that the white crystal eyeball had fallen on the bell tower of a small town, with cracks all over the body, but the light inside had not dissipated much. The hazy light seemed to be passing through the big bell, turning into invisible ripples and spreading in all directions. Is this pollution from high-dimensional overlookers? After looking at it carefully for a while, Hester temporarily rejected this guess. The residents of the town are still living peacefully, and have not changed due to the arrival of the white crystal eyeballs. No one even knows that there is a pair of white crystal eyeballs on the bell tower. It always makes people feel uneasy. Hasta stared at it for a long time, and after confirming that there was nothing unusual, he left the Hall of Stars. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Count Hall's villa. The dim sunlight was slipping out from the window. In front of the desk, Audrey pouted slightly, her right elbow resting on the table, her palm supporting her fair face, and her left index finger unconsciously drawing circles on the table. A little annoying, very annoying, very annoying. Tonight she was going to the Glillant's house for a party. This was decided many days ago, and this was also the first party after the Keelingos incident, so she had a lot of expectations for it. But her father, Count Hall, got the news from nowhere and talked to her about it. She thought Count Hall would stop her from going to Glillant's house for the party, but she didn't expect Count Hall to stop her. Instead, he asked her to say something to Mr. Asta. To be precise, he asked her to invite Mr. Asta to her house. This was originally a very normal social invitation, but when it came out of Count Hall's mouth, it gave people a very strange feeling. If you really want to invite Mr. Asta to your house, can't you just send an invitation? Why make it so complicated and ask her to convey it on his behalf? Her elder brother Hibbert also has a good relationship with Mr. Asta, so it would be better for him to invite him than for herself, right? What really gave her a headache was that she had no idea why Earl Hall wanted to invite Mr. Asta to be his guest. After thinking hard to no avail, Audrey looked at the golden retriever in the corner, who was flipping through the pages of a book with his paws raised. After a while, he said, "Susie, can you answer my questions?" "Audrey, the book says that you should solve your own troubles by yourself, and this is the way to completely eradicate your troubles." "Susie, you have read so many books, but there is no mention of helping friends in the books." "But the book also says that not all friends can be helped." After a pause, Susie asked in confusion, "By the way, Audrey, are friends divided into different levels?" Audrey's eyes lit up and she felt much happier. It was rare for Susie to take the initiative to seek help from her. Since Susie devoted herself to her studies, it became increasingly difficult for her to feel superior to Susie. She thought for a moment and said seriously, "Of course, according to the depth of friendship, it can be divided into nodding friends, ordinary friends, good friends, friends worth deep friendship, friends worth entrusting life and death, and friends beyond life and death." Then how to judge the depth of friendship between each other? What are the specific symbols? Or is there a quantifiable value? A value exceeding a certain scale means that the friendship between each other can be further improved. Audrey listened silently at first, then her mouth slowly opened and finally closed. She looked at Susie with a complicated expression and said earnestly, "Susie, you are just a dog." "I know, Audrey, this does not need you to remind me, I know how to be a good dog better than anyone else." "I mean, you don't need to know too much about human things. The book says that because we are full of unknowns about the world, we need to learn to understand the world." "Audrey, is this sentence wrong?" Audrey held her forehead with her hand. She felt that she had one more worry. Perhaps from the beginning, I shouldn't have taught Susie to learn knowledge, and I shouldn't have let it learn by itself. At night, at Grallant's house. In the study on the second floor, Hasta, Grallant, Hugh, Furs, and Miss Audrey, who looked unhappy. Hugh asked curiously, "Miss Audrey, you don't look very good?" "I'm just in a bad mood recently." Audrey smiled in response. She couldn't tell others that she was not as good as a dog, and was almost asked to collapse by a dog. Grallant looked around and said with regret, "Audrey, why didn't you bring Susie tonight? It has eaten too much recently and has severe indigestion. It is lying at home now." Audrey can guarantee that she is telling the truth. Susie did eat too much knowledge, and it ate too much messy knowledge, which led to indigestion. Is the situation serious? I can help with the diagnosis and treatment. I am very good at treating pets now. Grallant, thank you for your kindness. I have hired the best doctor for Susie. Audrey refused with a smile. The doctor she mentioned was herself, and she was naturally very good. In order to avoid others from asking about Susie again, Audrey said slowly, "In the last Keelingos incident, we perfectly thwarted his conspiracy to assassinate Duke Negan. In this regard, we can all be regarded as heroes who protect Backlund." Shu and Furs were a little embarrassed. They did not investigate too much useful information. In the end, they learned from reading the newspaper that Keelingos sneaked into Backlund to assassinate Duke Negan. Audrey looked at Shu and Furs and said with a smile, "Your information is very valuable and will help me make the right judgment. I am willing to pay you 500 gold pounds each for this." "How much?" 500 gold pounds. Shu and Furs opened their eyes wide at the same time, and their pupils shrank slightly. "This is a 500 gold pound bounty. The total bounties from all the missions they have completed in the past shouldn't be more than 500 gold pounds, right?" Miss Audrey is truly the epitome of generosity. No, she is shining all over. She is the angel who saves the poor. "Thank you for your generosity." Zio and 4C paused for a while before reacting. "This is the reward you deserve." Audrey had a smile on her face. The Zillings incident brought her at least 20,000 gold pounds. Paying the 1,000 gold pounds was not a problem for her. Then, Audrey looked at Grey Lint, and also said that he was also rewarded with 200 gold pounds. Originally, Audrey planned to pay 500 gold pounds as a reward for the risk he took against Grey Lint. But it was difficult to explain this matter openly, so Grey Lint, who did not help with anything on the surface, could only receive less remuneration than Zio and 4C. As for Mr. Hastur, Audrey's eyes fell on Hastur, and she did not propose to pay the relevant compensation. They had already negotiated before, and what Mr. Hastur wanted was to be promoted to the nobility. As for the remuneration, she knew that Mr. Osta's financial situation was very good recently, so she had no idea of spending money to observe Mr. Osta's reaction. She also felt that it was a pity that as Mr. Hastur became richer, it became harder and harder for her to appreciate this simple pleasure. After settling this matter, Audrey returned the stage to Grey Lint, who was already ready to make a move. "Everyone, I recently got a magical dog, a dog that can do backflips." Grey Linte said, stretched out his hand and shouted, "Late, come here." A golden retriever puppy squatting outside the door ran in and fawned over Grey Lint very intimately. "Come on, shake hands." The little golden retriever raised its right front paw, and then looked at Grey Lint. After Grey Lint stretched out his palm, he placed his right front paw on the palm of his hand. "Light, you did a great job." Grey Lint was very satisfied with the performance of the little golden retriever. He reached out and touched its head twice, and then shouted, "Late, do some backflips." Woof! The little golden retriever barked and started backflips on the spot, and it was still backflips continuously. This attracted the attention of Zio and 4C, and even Audrey cast curious glances. "Come on, do another front flip." Grey Lint then directed the little golden retriever to perform other somewhat difficult actions. After a lot of work, Grey Linte happily took out the meat strips and rewarded the little golden retriever, who won applause for his efforts. 4C asked curiously, "Is this the extraordinary ability of the animal trainer?" "Yes, I can now easily see through the inner thoughts of any animal. They are also willing to get close to me and obey my commands. It is not difficult for me to tame them, as if they were born this way." Grey Lint was happy to answer this. Shu sighed. "This is the charm of the extraordinary world. It's a pity that Backlund doesn't sell those more powerful pets, such as large lizards, two-headed flying dragons and other creatures." Grey Lint felt regretful that he was no longer satisfied with just taming kittens and puppies. Things that were too simple could not bring him a sense of accomplishment. 4C was a little unsure and said, "Such creatures generally only exist in the primeval forests of the southern continent, right? My second brother is currently in the southern continent. He once told me that there are indeed many magical creatures on the verge of extinction in the southern continent, such as a giant snake that can swallow an elephant in one bite, a giant ape that is 7 or 8 meters tall, etc." Audrey briefly did some popular science. "I really want to take a trip to the southern continent." Grey Linte stroked the little golden retriever's head, his tone full of regret. Asta reminded with a smile. The southern continent is not peaceful at the moment, you should give up this idea. I'm just thinking about it. Apart from the air, Backland is fine. I don't want to go to the southern continent to suffer. Greylint waved his hand to show that he was not stupid. Then Zio also began to share what he saw and heard during this period, the most important of which revolved around the followers of the stars. Greylinte looked curious when he heard this, for C looked slightly strange and the smile on his face was a bit forced, and Hester listened quietly and calmly. Audrey, who took in the expressions of others, could not help but stay on for C for a while. Furs looked a little strange. Audrey, who was already a Sequence 8 mind reader, could see the slight change in Furs's expression at a glance. Based on her understanding of Furs, there was only one reason for this. Furs knew more about the Star Believers than Hugh, who was talking freely. It was possible that she had come into contact with relevant information about the Star Believers, or perhaps she even knew the Star Believers. In her little head, Audrey kept making associations, and the thought that Furs was a Star Believer flashed through her mind. In the end, she thought that it was more likely that Furs knew some of the secrets of the Star Believers. As if noticing Audrey's scrutiny, Furs immediately sat up straight and collected his mind, not letting Audrey see through his true thoughts. Audrey felt a little pity, and she wanted to observe Furs more. When she withdrew her gaze from Furs, she caught a glimpse of Mr. Hester observing her with the same eyes he used to observe Furs. Audrey also subconsciously collected her mind and did not let her emotions show. But after doing all this, she was stunned again. Isn't this the same as the problematic Furs? A feeling of guilt. Audrey glanced at Hester again with her peripheral vision, and saw that the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, as if he was amused by his reaction just now. Who is the audience after all? Audrey snorted in her heart, turned her head slightly, and avoided Hester's sight. Star Believer, I have been hearing about him recently. Just one Star Believer has caused martial law in Backland. This person is really not simple. Growlant said with emotion. Yes, the Star Believer is indeed not simple. Fortunately, he has not been caught yet, otherwise his fate would be miserable. Being burned at the stake is already a blessing. Zio's pointed words made Furs even more nervous, and her cheeks were a little hot. Listening to their words of flattering the Star Believer, she felt embarrassed. She is just an apprentice of Sequence 9. I really don't have the ability to stir up the changes in Backland, and now the so-called Star Believer is a fake. But she couldn't say these things openly, so she could only silently bear the blame. It's really not her, so wronged. I'm also curious about the identity of the Star Believer. Audrey also joined the topic, and her eyes deliberately swept across Furs's face. Furs's face was tense, pretending not to notice Audrey's gaze, which made Audrey feel a little disappointed. Stars, aren't there stars above our heads? Hester's words aroused everyone's reverie, and they subconsciously looked up at the starry sky, and even Furs followed suit. Audrey, who had heard similar words, first glanced at everyone before looking up at the sky. After looking for a while, Greyland shuddered and said, "Everyone, let's not talk about this topic. There is always a feeling of being spied on. It's not that you will be spied on. At this moment, all your actions are seen by the stars." Asta murmured in his heart and echoed. Indeed, the stars overlook the world and are everywhere. We should not discuss such a terrifying existence. It would be bad if we attract the attention of the stars. Furs also expressed his opinion. We should be careful. The stars are too far away from us. Audrey and Zio also tacitly revealed this matter. After a moment of silence, Zio asked as usual who knew the formula of the sheriff's potion. He thought this was another fruitless gathering. I have the formula of the sheriff's potion. Asta spoke. His formula of the sheriff's potion was provided by Sharon and Marich. Zio's eyes lit up and he said very simply, "How many gold pounds do you need?" Having just received a huge sum of 500 gold pounds, her self-confidence was a little inflated. 450 gold pounds. Asta gave a relatively suitable price. Okay. Shu breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she had just received 500 gold pounds from Miss Audrey, otherwise she would have to borrow money from Furs temporarily. Do you have a magic potion formula for the magician? Furs also wanted to try to see if there was anything to gain, but unfortunately, no one responded to her task. Audrey originally wanted to ask if there was a magic potion formula for the psychologist, but Shu and Furs obviously had no access to such useful information of Sequence 7. Grellant, who had been staying at home, could not count on it. Only Mr. Asta might know. After thinking about it, she decided to entrust Mr. Asta to help find it privately. After chatting freely for a while, Audrey stood up and prepared to leave. Before leaving, she gave Asta a hidden look. After the party, Asta did not take the carriage, but walked a distance in the direction Audrey left. Soon, he found a carriage parked on the side of the road, and Audrey's personal maid was waiting outside the carriage. The personal maid looked alert, staring at Asta, and then watched Asta enter the carriage. "Mr. Asta, I'm sorry to meet you privately in this way. This is also a different experience for me." Audrey smiled and said, "This Sunday, my father, Earl Hall, wants to invite you to his home. I wonder if Mr. Asta has the time. Is it because of the promotion of the title? I don't know, he didn't tell me, he just asked me to invite you." Asta felt a little strange, but still agreed to go to the appointment. He had originally wanted to find an opportunity to bribe Earl Hall, and now Earl Hall took the initiative to invite him, which was a great opportunity. It was a pity that the hound entrusted to Grellant to train was too young and could not be used for the time being. Audrey said a little embarrassedly, "In addition to this matter, there is another thing I want to ask Mr. Hasta for help." "What is it?" "I have successfully promoted to a Sequence 8 mind reader, but I don't have the potion formula of a Sequence 7 psychiatrist. Can Mr. Hasta help me keep an eye out for it?" Asta thought for a while and said, "The potion formula of a psychiatrist is generally only possessed by the Psychological Alchemy Society. This is a relatively young new organization. With your identity, as long as you show your interest in this area, they should take the initiative to send someone to invite you to join." Audrey's eyes widened a little. "My identity, am I so valuable? There is only one most dazzling pearl in Backland." Asta joked, and Audrey pouted lightly, but soon flattened the corners of her mouth and asked curiously, "Does Mr. Hasta know much about the Psychological Alchemy Society?" "I just heard about it." Seeing that Audrey was curiously waiting for his next words, Hasta organized his words and spoke. "The original Psychological Alchemy Society was just a seminar for enthusiasts. They all believe that the mind has infinite power and infinite magic. Later, this seminar obtained a treasure map and found the relics left by Hermes, which laid the research foundation and direction of the Psychological Alchemy Society. The original members originally wanted to maintain the previous purely academic discussion status, but they always needed help when encountering problems. Therefore, the Psychological Alchemy Society gradually developed rules and regulations, and then transformed into a real secret organization." Audrey listened carefully, and after Asta finished speaking, she asked in confusion, "Just now, Mr. Asta kept mentioning the initial Psychological Alchemy meeting. Is the current Psychological Alchemy meeting different from the beginning?" Quote. Asta said with a faint smile on his lips, "Any organization or country, no matter how good their original intentions are at the beginning, will always change slowly as time goes by and new members join. Psychological Alchemy Society same thing. Is the current Psychological Alchemy bad? They no longer have the purity they had at the beginning. The organization originally established for purely academic discussions has now been mixed with too many selfish desires." Audrey was silent for a while, feeling that this was a pity. For her, the original intention of establishing psychological alchemy was really attractive to her. She likes this kind of pure academic exchange organization without too much selfishness. Unfortunately, it has changed. After feeling emotional, she quickly reacted. Since the current Psychological Alchemy Society is no longer as pure as it was before and is full of selfishness, then she has no psychological burden to be an undercover agent for the Tarot Club in the Psychological Alchemy Society. Does Mr. Asta think I should join the Psychological Alchemy Society? This may be a very good start for your extraordinary career. Thank you, Mr. Asta, for your advice. Audrey expressed her gratitude to Asta very sincerely. After asking the business, the carriage fell into silence for a short time. The more no one speaks, the more awkward the atmosphere is, and the more awkward it is, the less people want to speak. Audrey glanced at Asta, who was sitting opposite her, and when she was about to speak to break the awkward atmosphere, Asta also opened his mouth to say something. The two looked at each other, each of them was slightly stunned, then looked away, and a smile climbed onto their cheeks. Mr. Asta doesn't seem to be used to communicating with people? Miss Audrey is sometimes not as sociable as the rumors say. What kind of image do I have in the rumors? Audrey blinked, full of interest in this question. Of course she knew how the outside world evaluated her, but she just wanted to hear what Mr. Asta said, whether there would be any difference. Cough cough cough. Outside the carriage, there were a few undisguised coughs, which was her personal maid reminding them that they should end the chat. Audrey felt a little pity, and could only watch Asta lift the curtain and go away alone. Star Hall. Hasta convened a belated star gathering. He found that if the star gathering was held every half a month, the time would be too tight, there would be few things happening, and there would not be much to talk about. Every time there was nothing to say, he had to stand up and bring up topics to keep the star gathering going. 1 or 2 times would be fine, but if it happened too many times, his knowledge reserve would be seriously insufficient, and he could not guarantee that every topic he brought up would attract their attention. Therefore, extending the time for the star gathering was the best solution. Moreover, for the outer gods such as the Mother Tree of Desire, the Superstar Lord, and the Lamp God, half a month was too short and passed in a flash. At least it should be extended to 1 month, or once every 2 months, to be more in line with the needs. As the chain of order danced, the Lamp God, the Mother Tree of Desire, and the Superstar Lord came to the Star Hall one after another. The Lamp God was obviously the more excited one, probably because he was locked in the Wishing God lamp every day, with no one to talk to, and was too bored. Isn't the star gathering held every 15 days? The Lamp God asked his doubts first. Asta responded calmly, time doesn't mean much to us. 15 days is too short. The star gathering will be held every 2 months in the future. What? We want to extend the time of each star gathering. The Lamp God was a little dissatisfied. Coming to the Star Hall to chat and fight with the Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Lord was already one of the few pleasures for him now. Now this pleasure has to be cut in half. I have no objection. I agree too. The Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Lord agreed successively, and the Lamp God could only reluctantly accept this result. If any of you encounter a major event and need to hold a star gathering, as long as you express your wishes, I will naturally make an exception and give you a chance. Asta still recognized the existence of special circumstances. This is a special regulation he prepared for himself. The Lamp God chuckled and said, if you have nothing to do, can I come and chat with you? Asta glanced at the Lamp God and said with a faint smile, if I have time. That Bernadette has been promoted to sequence 2. It seems that your life trapped in the wishing lamp is not easy. The Superstar Overlord always seizes the opportunity to stab accurately. The Lamp God sneered, the situation in the southern continent has changed suddenly. Have you and the group of believers of the Mother Tree of Desire found a nest for hiding next time? The Mother Tree of Desire said calmly, their actions are just in vain. So confident. The Lamp God expressed disbelief and sneered, only a stupid son of Sequence 1 can change the situation of the war. Death is just the beginning, never the end. Are you going to abandon that group of believers? Those who exist will still exist, and those who perish are destined to perish. Ha! The Lamp God was disdainful of the Mother Tree of Desire's vague behavior. Don't let me find your hiding place, otherwise I don't mind helping Bernadette. She has always wanted to seek revenge on your stupid son. The Mother Tree of Desire ignored the provocation of the Lamp God. In his opinion, the Lamp God was too bored to do anything, so he came to find trouble. The more he paid attention to him, the more excited he became. Haha, it's really boring. The Lamp God was too lazy to talk nonsense with the Mother Tree of Desire. He leaned back in his chair, stretched out a pair of golden long legs and placed them on the table, then deliberately closed his eyes and pretended to be in deep thought. Without the Lamp God bringing up the topic, Asta sighed secretly and could only bring up the topic himself to avoid making the scene too awkward and boring. Asta glanced at them and said in a gentle tone, "Recently, many beings are looking for my believers. Are you also involved?" The Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Overlord were silent. As early as the first time they came to the Hall of Stars, they wanted to understand the mysterious existence in front of them by looking for believers of the stars. The lamp god chuckled and said, "There are always some people who have evil intentions." Asta did not follow the lamp god's gloating gaze to look at the Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Lord, but stared at him for a while. The lamp god seemed to have forgotten that he was the first outer god to come to the Hall of Stars, and the first to guide Bernadette to help find the believers of the stars, and even suggested that Bernadette tell the Seven Gods Church about the believers of the stars. "Should I remind him? I am now trapped in the wishing lamp, and I can't interfere with the outside world." The lamp god explained that even if he had looked for believers of the stars before, he was now powerless, and the objects he needed to be vigilant about were the Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Lord. For the mysterious existence that appeared out of thin air, it is an inevitable choice to find a way to understand him. This is just an instinct for self-preservation. The Mother Tree of Desire chose to lower its attitude. "Perhaps your believers are also looking for relevant information about us. In comparison, you have an advantage in this regard." The Superstar Lord chose to look at each other equally. Hastur just looked at them calmly. "The stars are looking down on everything. You are all under the watchful eyes of the stars." This was an act of changing the subject, and it was also an opportunity to strike a blow to the Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Lord, so that they would not be dishonest and cause trouble for themselves. The Mother Tree of Desire thought for a while before saying, "The fallen Mother Goddess contacted me some time ago. She also wants to come here to attend the Gathering of Stars." "When did the fallen Mother Goddess make a new move? I didn't notice it at all." "She is indeed one of the three pillars. There are many ways to bypass the attention of the stars." Asta didn't show any emotion on the surface. It seems that he has known the news for a long time. He was thinking about countermeasures in his heart. The lamp god, who finally waited for the opportunity, laughed and said, "I knew you wouldn't be so honest. It turns out that you have been secretly communicating with the fallen Mother Goddess. Tisk, it's a pity that you still can't escape the attention of the stars." "My confession is just to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings. Besides, the fallen Mother Goddess contacted me after the last gathering of stars. She just asked me to ask a question for her." The Mother Tree of Desire didn't care about the lamp god's ridicule. Anyway, the lamp god only had that mouth left to be free now. "Fallen Mother Goddess." Asta seemed to be full of emotion, and then stretched out his hand to summon the picture of the star belonging to the fallen Mother Goddess. Outside the starry sky, the stars were twinkling, and the area where the fallen Mother Goddess was located was dark and lightless. Even the light of the stars was swallowed by her. Her figure was hidden in the extreme darkness, and even the Mother Tree of Desire, the Superstar Lord, and the Lamp God could not penetrate this darkness. With this attitude alone, he cannot be allowed to come to the gathering of the stars. The Lamp God firmly opposed the request of the fallen Mother Goddess to come to the gathering. The Superstar Lord said with a serious face, "The fallen Mother Goddess is still as cautious as ever. And powerful." He also tried to block the gaze from the stars, but he could never do it. In order to avoid the gaze of the stars, the light egg that he dropped when he attacked the eternal sun last time deliberately did not carry his own will, and completely cut off from the new life that was being nurtured. As for whether he could avoid the gaze of the stars, he was not completely sure. At present, the means of the fallen Mother Goddess to block the prying of the stars are obviously better than him and the Mother Tree of Desire. This is the embodiment of the strength and status of the fallen Mother Goddess. I also don't agree with the fallen Mother Goddess attending the gathering of stars. After thinking for a while, the Superstar Lord also expressed his attitude. As for the Mother Tree of Desire, if the fallen Mother Goddess hadn't taken the initiative to find him, he wouldn't have talked to the fallen Mother Goddess about the stars at all. This time he was just delivering the message, which didn't mean he agreed with the fallen Mother Goddess to come to the gathering of stars. It's better to let the high-dimensional overlooker come. The lamp god seemed to mention it unintentionally. The Superstar Lord looked at him and said, "You seem to be looking forward to the arrival of the high-dimensional overlooker? Is it not possible? I don't need your consent." The lamp god replied unceremoniously. "Hey, even if the high-dimensional overlooker comes to the gathering of stars, he may not stand on your side. Do you need to worry about my affairs?" The lamp god glanced at the Superstar Lord with disdain. The Superstar Lord didn't waste words with the lamp god anymore, and seemed to know that the lamp god today was a powder keg, a mad dog, ignited at a touch, and bit whoever he saw. Hastur, who was quietly observing, admired the style of the lamp god today, and was glad that the lamp god was there. If the outer gods he had invited to the meeting at the beginning were the Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Lord, the direction of the entire meeting would probably be controlled by the two of them. Hastur dispersed the image of the star where the fallen Mother Goddess was, and said with a smile, "Is the fallen Mother Goddess also getting anxious?" The lamp god naturally replied, "Of course she will be anxious. Isn't the moon also one of the stars?" His words hit the point of concern of the fallen Mother Goddess. The moon sequence is one of the two extraordinary ways for the fallen Mother Goddess to be torn to the earth. If the stars wake up, the extraordinary way of the moon sequence may be controlled by the stars. In this way, it will be more difficult for the fallen Mother Goddess to recover. For the fallen Mother Goddess, the existence of the stars seems to be naturally on the opposite side of her. This is also the thought in the hearts of the Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Lord. This is also the real reason why they think that the star returners are unwilling to pull the fallen Mother Goddess to participate in the star gathering. The words of the Jinn god opened up a new way of thinking for Hastur. He had not thought about this before, and he had never thought about occupying the extraordinary path of the moon that originally belonged to the fallen Mother Goddess. But hearing what the Jinn god said, combined with the behavior of the fallen Mother Goddess, it seemed that he really had the ability to occupy the moon's extraordinary path. Are they all thinking that the returner of the stars must have ideas about the fallen Mother Goddess' extraordinary path to the moon? So they are unwilling to bring the fallen Mother Goddess to the Hall of Stars for a meeting? The current controller of the extraordinary path of the moon is Lilith, the Earth Mother. He is no match for the fallen Mother Goddess. The authority and extraordinary pathways in his hands are being constantly taken back by the fallen Mother Goddess. Once the end comes, he will basically fall into the hands of the fallen Mother Goddess. Rather than being taken back by the fallen Mother Goddess, it would be better to be possessed by oneself. If the moon belongs to the stars, what about the eternal sun? He should also be part of the stars, right? Hastur thought for a while and felt that he was too ambitious. After all, he was only sequence 7 now. There is still a long way to go before competing for the level of extraordinary path. If the stars intend to compete with the fallen Mother Goddess for the moon, I wouldn't mind helping. The Mother Tree of Desire was the first to express its stance. It was happy to see the fallen Mother Goddess deflated. Moreover, this would reduce the strength of the fallen Mother Goddess and also affect her mind. For me, this was the best choice. The fallen Mother Goddess has always believed that she is higher than other ancient beings, and I don't mind letting her suffer some hidden losses. The Superstar Master obviously has trouble dealing with the fallen Mother Goddess. The Jinn opened his mouth to say something, but suddenly realized that there seemed to be nothing he could do to help. That was the fallen Mother Goddess, one of the 3 pillars entrenched outside the starry sky. Even when I was at my most complete, I didn't dare to be too presumptuous in front of him, let alone now. But in terms of face, he must not ignore it, and also echoed, "It is indeed a very interesting thing to make the fallen Mother Goddess suffer." Listening to the Mother Tree of Desire, Superstar Master, and Jinn God expressing their opinions one after another, Hastur was shocked to realize that such a huge force had gathered around him. Even if they are not of the same mind as him, they can cooperate with each other on certain things and gather into a force that can shake even the fallen Mother Goddess. Hall of Stars, Gathering of Stars, Return of Stars. At this moment, Hastur's understanding of the returner of the stars went one step further. Gathering the power of the stars, this may be the meaning of the existence of the Palace of Stars. There's no rush. Let's wait until he and the Earth Mother Goddess decide the winner first. Hasta calmly broached the subject. The Mother Tree of Desire reminded, the Earth Mother Goddess is by no means a match for the fallen Mother Goddess, and her end is already doomed. The power of the moon is no longer in the hands of the Earth Mother. Dark night. The Mother Tree of Desire groaned, and then said with admiration, his ambition seems to be very great. Hasta said in a calm tone that saw through the future, the new old day will be born within the original barrier. New old days? Are you referring to the goddess of the night? Or will other gods merge with the source of matter first and become the new old one? Which outer god's essence will be fused first? The Mother Tree of Desire, Superstar Master, and Jinn were thinking about this issue at the same time. If a new one is born within the initial barrier before the initial barrier is broken, it may rewrite the ending of the doomsday. Abominable mystery. The Jinn finally couldn't help but curse. The original Lord of Mysteries not only sealed him into the magical wishing lamp, but also sealed his origin country of disorder in the Western continent, making it impossible for him to get in touch with the country of disorder. Mysterious deeds are indeed worse than God. The Mother Tree of Desire also showed its dissatisfaction with the Lord of Mysteries, and his source of Shadow World was also sealed in the Western continent. At the same time, several other major source materials from the past were sealed. Only God's Sea of Chaos and the Source Castle belonging to the Lord of Mysteries were not sealed in the Western continent. Although the original God was also studying a more advanced method, he did not seal all the other sources in one go. In comparison, the behavior of the Lord of Mysteries appears extremely bad. The Superstar Master said with a slight smile. The mystery is inherently more difficult to deal with than God and the fallen Mother Goddess, and even more difficult to penetrate. If God's character and behavior are upright, and the fallen Mother Goddess is dark and unpredictable, then the Lord of Mysteries jumps left and right between the two, and is the most unpredictable. This is the brilliance of the Lord of Mysteries. Hasta just made a brief comment and did not tell the Desired Tree and the Jinn that as long as they wanted to get back their own source of essence, it would be difficult to circumvent the difficulty of the Lord of Mysteries. Unless the Lord of Mysteries awakens, the seal of the Western continent cannot be broken. But once the Lord of Mystery wakes up, it will be more difficult for them to regain their own source of essence. This is an endless loop. It is estimated that only when the initial barrier is shattered and doomsday comes, they can bypass the Lord of Mysteries and retrieve their own essence. Therefore, no matter how hard the Desired Tree and the Jinn are planning now, as long as the doomsday has not come, they are doing nothing. Hasta was kind-hearted and could not bear to tell them this disappointing fact. Let them continue to move forward with hope. The Jinn thought for a moment and said in a serious tone, I would like to know if the Lord of Mysteries who has not yet returned is also under the gaze of the stars. Hasta just smiled and said nothing. In this silent way, he told the Jinn, the Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Lord, that the Lord of Mysteries was also under the gaze of the stars. The Mother Tree of Desire said in a deep voice, what conditions are needed to exchange information about the current Lord of Mysteries? I'm just a witness. Hasta refuses the conditions of the Mother Tree of Desire. Just kidding, if I tell the Mother Tree of Desire about Klein, she will capture Klein and imprison him, even at the risk of the death of the god Saya, and then find a way to occupy the Source Castle. The Jinn felt it was a pity that this road was blocked. He also wanted to know where the current Lord of Mysteries was and how he would return. He really wanted to beat up Shemi and vent his anger on him for so many years of imprisonment. Let's end the party today. Seeing that the conversation was almost over, Hasta was ready to end this gathering of stars. Compared to the past, this time the Mother Tree of Desire, the Superstar Master, and the Jinn were a little more awe and fearful of themselves. Apparently they knew the latest news about the Lord of Mysteries, which made them realize that they were in a truly terrifying place. The gaze from the stars, no matter what kind of outer god it is always under the gaze of the stars. This is true for the fallen Mother Goddess who is still alive and the Lord of Mysteries who has not yet returned. Everything is under the gaze of the stars. In the southern continent, deep in a primitive forest, Bernadette used pea vines and the surrounding forest trees to weave a huge plant palace. At this moment, she was sitting high above the palace, looking at the golden wishing lamp in the palace, thinking about the gathering of stars. She was a little confused as to why the stars wanted to invite the djinn to the starry sky party. Today's djinn is sealed in the wishing lantern. Apart from making wishes to him, he has no power to affect the real world. When his sequence was still low, the djinn could not leave the wishing lamp. Now that he was at sequence 2, it was even more difficult for the djinn to leave the wishing lamp. Does such a djinn have any other functions? Not long after, the familiar starry sky reappeared, and Bernadette's eyes narrowed slightly. That was the country where the stars were. I don't know if I will be able to go to that mysterious country in the future to have a closer look. When the stars dispersed, Bernadette wanted to take back the magic lamp and then go about her business. Bernadette, I can help you find the hiding place of the followers of the Mother Tree of Desire. You just need to allow me a little freedom. The djinn suddenly spoke. A little freedom? Bernadette chuckled and said with a bit of sarcasm. I don't need your help now, you should continue to stay in the wishing lamp. Bernadette. The lamp god wanted to say something more, but Bernadette completely sealed him in the wishing lamp, depriving him of even the right to speak. Inside the wishing lantern, the genie showed no anger on his face, but was puzzled by Bernadette's sudden promotion to sequence 2. Without someone's guidance, it would have been impossible for Bernadette to know about the existence of the high-dimensional overlooker, let alone complete the conditions for promotion to sequence 2 through this incident. There may be only one incarnation that can see through the higher dimensional gaze. The one who returns the stars. This gathering made him understand even more how terrifying the power of the star returner was. Under the stars, everything was invisible. The high-dimensional overlooker should also be exposed because of this. Are you giving Bernadette some guidance and helping her advance to sequence 2 just to take advantage of me? Bernadette is a believer in the stars. The djinn's heart skipped a beat, and he felt that he had figured out the key to the problem. But a new problem came again. If he wanted to tell the Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Lord this news, he could only point it out directly in front of the star returners. Haha, I'm not that great yet. The djinn sneered. It was impossible for him to risk offending the star returner to help the Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Master. It seems that I will be nicer to Bernadette in the future. The djinn murmured and fell into deep thought. Hillston District. Asta spent 2 days here to inspect the projects and companies he was interested in, mainly to see what kind of people the project and company leaders were. If the person in charge was not good, no matter how good the project was, it would be difficult to succeed. If he met those greedy guys, he would dare to embezzle as much money as he invested. Asta has always been zero tolerance for such corrupt elements. So in the end, of the 6 projects and 8 companies he inspected, only 2 projects and 2 companies were left, and the main direction was industrial research. In order to make himself legally tenable in the future, Asta found a more shrewd and capable lawyer from his law firm and asked him to be responsible for signing a series of investment agreements. He also took this opportunity to become a lawyer again. After finishing all this and finally having time, Asta accepted Greg's invitation. When he was busy in Hillston District these 2 days, Greg had always wanted to invite him out for dinner, but he didn't have time until now. In a private room of a Fainaport restaurant, Asta and Greg were enjoying delicious food while chatting about business matters. Greg wanted to teach Asta some business experience, and told Asta a lot of business cases and secrets, and also told him some unspoken rules in the business world. Asta listened silently. He was really not good at this aspect, and Greg's appearance just helped him make up for this shortcoming. Greg, I am more optimistic about the grain industry in the future, what do you think? Asta, who got a favor for nothing, deliberately began to guide Greg to pay attention to grain issues. Greg frowned slightly and said, now is the reform period, the land of the nobles is not valuable. With the abolition of the corn law, the price of grain is generally sluggish and weak, and there is no possibility of recovery in a short time. This is not a good investment direction. It is precisely because the land of the nobles is not valuable at the moment that it is a great opportunity for us to acquire land. If there is a large-scale war in the future, won't the price of grain rise with the tide? Greg was very satisfied that Asta had his own ideas and insights, but he still rejected Asta's judgment. Some time ago, before the implementation of the corn law, Our Negan family had already sold a lot of land in advance. My father and uncle would not agree that our family would go back to the old path of land. Industry and banking are the focus of our future layout. You are right about one thing. Now is indeed the best time to acquire land, but there is one thing you did not consider. A large amount of land means that you have to hire a large number of farmers to manage it. Now the salary of working in a factory is generally 2 or 3 times that of a farmer. Generally, farmers who can work hard will choose to work in a factory as much as possible. If you want to retain people, you need to pay more wages. Quote, there may indeed be a war in the future, and the price of food will inevitably rise with it, but the future is too far away and unpredictable. The money wasted during this period may have exceeded your possible future profits. Greg paused for a moment and smiled again. Another point, even if the price of food rises in the future, our income from industry and banking will still be much greater than agriculture. So no matter which aspect you consider, buying land to grow food is not the best choice for our Negan family. Asta listened silently. He had to admit that what Greg said made sense. The income from the layout of industry and banks was much greater than agriculture. This is the inevitability of the advancement of the times. But there is one thing that Greg is not clear about. The future of the war between the countries is not far away. The financial industry is rootless in the troubled times and is not as real as a bag of white food. The doomsday will come in just over a decade, and no matter how the industry develops, it is extremely limited. And the most important point is that the Negan family does not need too much food, but they need it. There is a saying that goes like this: build high walls, store up food, and slowly become king. With the upcoming war among nations and the participation of various outer gods' old powers, the future world will surely be a chaotic world. For Asta, having enough food is the real foundation for his survival in the chaotic world. When war brings famine, a mouthful of food can make people work hard for him. Asta nodded, and did not persuade Greg anymore, but said, Greg, you are right, but I still need to buy a lot of land, preferably in South Wales. Greg thought for a while, smiled and said, I remember that your Campbell family's territory is in South Wales, right? Yes, if there is a chance, I would like to redeem the territory that originally belonged to our Campbell family, and it would be best to acquire the land of other nobles nearby. Asta did not hide this. Well, now is indeed a good time, and you do need a lot of territory. I can help a little with this matter. Facing Asta's slightly lit eyes, Greg smiled and explained a few words. At present, many nobles are on the verge of bankruptcy. They have long wanted to sell their land, but basically no nobles will take over at this time unless they offer a very low price. The Negan family is at the top of the noble family and has a lot of information about nobles. The nobles of South Wales are naturally included in that information. It was not difficult for Greg to help Asta find a seller and lower the price. Asta said with emotion, Greg, I am so lucky to know you. Alas, it's a pity, Asta, why are you a boy? Greg sighed with pity. It's really a pity, Greg, why are you not a girl? Asta threw the topic back and picked up a piece of fragrant beef with a knife and fork. Asta, you really don't want to suffer at all. Greg, I always think you are more generous than me, so I will let you down a little bit. Quote. Greg shook his head and laughed, and began to taste the food. After dinner and business, Greg asked curiously, I heard from Hibbert that Earl Hall asked Audrey to invite you to his home. Yes, tomorrow night. Asta, do you think this will be the beginning of good things for you or the beginning of your misfortune? I think Earl Hall will not embarrass me, a junior, after all, he has always been very aristocratic. Greg smiled and said, it's hard to say. In addition to being a noble with grace, he is also a father who loves his daughter. Greg, did you misunderstand something? Asta, do you think there is really a misunderstanding here? Quote. Asta found it difficult to answer this question for a while, frowned slightly, and then relaxed. It should be that Earl Hall misunderstood, and he and Audrey were just normal friends. Or maybe Greg misunderstood. Earl Hall's invitation was just a very ordinary meal. After all, as a parent, he always wants to see what kind of person his daughter's recent friend is. Sunday night at 6 o'clock. Asta got on the carriage to Earl Hall's house under the eager anticipation of Butler Neal. On the carriage, Asta recalled Butler Neal's encouraging eyes and proud expression. Butler Neal seemed to be proud that his pigs could finally dig up other people's cabbages. This sense of déjà vu was too strong. Asta explained that there was nothing between him and Audrey, but Butler Neal just listened with a smile, treating his explanation as an embarrassed and shy performance. All of them, they always think about things as a relationship between men and women. Can't they be more open? Can't Audrey and I be just ordinary friends? Asta sighed and stopped thinking about these annoying problems. Let's think about how to bribe Earl Hall later. Well, it should be said to please him. Asta closed his eyes slightly and began to recall the information about Earl Hall that Greg had given him before. For example, what Earl Hall likes, what he is good at talking about, what aspects of his junior's abilities he values most, and what minefields he needs to pay attention to when getting along with him. The more he thought about it, the more awkward Asta felt. How could this give him the feeling of a son-in-law meeting his father-in-law? Asta's mood became even more complicated. The carriage rumbled forward and arrived outside Earl Hall's villa. Asta got off the carriage, and the person who came out to greet him was Earl Hall's eldest son Hibbert. After a friendly greeting, Hibbert whispered a reminder, "Earl Hall is not in a good mood tonight, you have to be careful." Not really. This is your first visit to my house, shouldn't you leave a good impression on the elders? Asta immediately understood. Hibbert also misunderstood. He had no choice but to say, "I will try my best to deal with it carefully, and I also believe that Earl Hall is a very elegant nobleman." Hibbert patted Asta's shoulder and said, "If you feel you can't hold on, you can ask Countess Hall for help." Asta opened his mouth and really wanted to explain himself. He was just an ordinary guest here, so why did he have such wild thoughts? But he didn't explain in the end. No matter how much he explained to Hibbert, he would only think it was an excuse for his shyness. Asta remained silent and followed Hibbert through the winding path through the fountain area and came to a large and luxurious house with the door already opened. "Don't be so depressed, relax. Our Earl Hall doesn't like a young man who is too restrained." Faced with Hibbert's careful reminder, Asta could only face it with a polite but awkward smile. "I can't say that I was silent all the way because I didn't want to talk to him." 3 high-hanging crystal lamps, with firelight on the surrounding walls, illuminated every corner of the entire first-floor hall. The road leading from the lobby to the restaurant was paved with expensive light red carpets, and a group of maids in black and white uniforms stood in each row. Arriving at the restaurant, a long dining table was placed vertically, filled with all kinds of exquisite dishes, cutlery, forks and other tableware. The maids began to get busy in an orderly manner. Earl Hall was wearing a formal tuxedo, sitting at the top of the table. His face was as usual, and there was no sign of any mood swings. A pair of majestic eyes fell on Hasta as soon as he arrived at the restaurant. Sitting on the right-hand side of Earl Hall is the intellectual and elegant Countess Hall. She also looks over with a smile on her face. Sitting beside Countess Hall was Audrey. Tonight, Audrey is wearing a long white and pink dress, with a string of emerald green gems hanging from her earlobes, and a ring of pink gems on her slender swan neck. She has blonde hair, blue eyes, and beautiful appearance, and she is absolutely unashamed of Baker Rand's most dazzling gem. Hibbert briefly introduced, "Please allow me to introduce this young and promising young man, Baron Hasta Campbell, the heir to the Campbell family and a good friend whom I recognize. Mr. Hasta is also a good friend of mine," Audrey added in her heart, and at the same time entered the audience state, curiously looking at Mr. Hasta tonight. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but she always felt that Mr. Hasta was a bit reserved tonight, and there seemed to be a trace of uneasiness in her heart. Although he appeared calm on the outside, he still had some psychological fluctuations after all. It's really rare that Mr. Hasta would have such psychological fluctuations. Is it because Earl Hall's aura is too strong? Audrey secretly looked at Earl Hall tonight with her peripheral vision. After observing for a while, his eyes widened slightly. Tonight, Earl Hall did not seem to be as calm as in the past. He had a lot of emotions in his heart, and he seemed to be facing the enemy. How come? His father actually considered Mr. Hasta as his enemy. And it's the kind of enemy that requires all your strength to defeat. Could it be that I saw it wrong? At this time, Earl Hall, who had been staring at Hasta, retracted his gaze and said calmly, "Not bad. It is indeed very good. It is more praised and liked than the rumors." Countess Hall also smiled and said. Hibbert looked at Audrey and smiled. "My sister, beautiful Miss Audrey, where is your compliment?" Baron Campbell is indeed a young, promising and knowledgeable nobleman. Hibbert finally looked at Hasta and said, "Asta, it seems that my family recognizes you." This sentence sounds normal, but different people have different thoughts when it falls on their ears. Even Hasta's heart suddenly moved. The atmosphere seemed to have subtly changed all of a sudden. Hasta bowed slightly and saluted. "The praise tonight will be something I will remember for the rest of my life." Countess Hall seemed satisfied with Hasta's humble gesture, and the smile on her face became more obvious. There was a smile on Hibbert's lips, and his eyes revealed emotions that were difficult to see through. Audrey wanted to strike up a conversation, but on this occasion, she felt it was better to speak less and keep a certain safe distance from Mr. Hasta. Although she didn't know what was special about tonight's invitation, she had such an intuition. Earl Hall said with a straight face and a low voice, "Sit down and eat." "Please." Hibbert came to the lower left position of Earl Hall, and then led Hasta to sit next to him, just face to face with Audrey. At this time, the maid who had just finished placing all kinds of tableware began to come over with dishes one after another. When Earl Hall began to pick up the knife and fork to taste the food, others followed suit. During the meal, no one spoke, even the footsteps of the maid in charge of serving dishes were very soft. Every time the plates or cutlery were placed there was no sound at all. This scene is like a silent mime. The only person who had a panoramic view of this mime scene was Susie lying on the walkway on the second floor. Its gaze contains the wisdom of seeing through the world. Its two front legs are folded in front of it, its head is slightly raised, and it is condescending, quietly enjoying the silent performance of the group of humans below in an elegant manner. Tonight, at this moment, it is the only real audience. The silence continued, as if there was an invisible pressure hanging over the dining table. Earl Hall didn't speak, and the others didn't speak first. Asta was quite satisfied with this kind of dining experience. The chef of Earl Hall's family obviously had a very high level of cooking. Even some common foods could be cooked with different delicacies. Although my own chef is not bad, in this aspect, I still can't compare with Earl Hall's chef. Hasta even came up with the idea of spending a lot of money to recruit a master chef back. Audrey, who was sitting opposite Hasta, felt a little uncomfortable. Tonight's dinner always gave her a very restricted feeling, as if there were some rules around her that bound everything, making it difficult to be free. She really wanted to tell Mr. Hasta across from him that in fact, their family's dinner on weekdays was not so boring. Occasionally, Earl Hall didn't mind telling some jokes to liven up the atmosphere. But Earl Hall seemed to be in a bad mood tonight, probably because he was not doing well outside. After thinking for a while, she could only taste the food silently. As the main meal ended, the maids served several very delicate and delicious desserts. When the desserts were served on the table, Audrey keenly caught the surprise flashing in Mr. Asta's eyes opposite. She was a little proud of this. She knew that Mr. Asta liked desserts, so in the arrangement of today's dinner, she specifically instructed several dessert chefs in the kitchen to pay attention to controlling the proportion of sugar, not too sweet, and to achieve a level of sweetness without being greasy. While Asta was silently enjoying the master-level dessert, Earl Hall, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Tonight's dessert is a little light. It's indeed a little lighter than before." Countess Hall also tasted that the dessert tonight was a little different from the usual dessert. Oops. Audrey's expression was slightly stiff, and she was a little flustered. She actually forgot that Earl Hall had a heavier taste and focused on the sweeter one in the choice of dessert. How to explain this? Hibbert seemed to see her embarrassment and chuckled. "I told the kitchen to lighten the dessert so that it would be more in line with the guest's taste." Earl Hall and Countess Hall looked over. Asta stopped eating and thanked Hibbert for his thoughtful arrangement. Earl Hall retracted his gaze, his calm face showed no emotion, but Countess Hall smiled and said, "Are you particular about desserts?" "It's just a personal preference.
I like to taste delicious food on weekdays. Asta answered truthfully.
With this beginning, the scene seemed to be harmonious all of a sudden. Hibbert said with a smile on his face, Asta, what are you busy with at home on weekdays?
In addition to dealing with some factory and law firm matters, I prefer to stay in the study to read some books, then taste delicious food, and occasionally go out for a walk to appreciate the beautiful backland.
Won't you feel bored staying alone at home for too long? This time the person asking the question was Countess Hall. Occasionally I will go to play with friends like Greg and Greyland. Then Countess Hall and Hibbert took turns asking some daily questions, and Asta answered them truthfully. They were all daily trivialities with a bit of gossip. Asta was a little uncomfortable at first, but later got used to this way of chatting. While tasting food, they talked about what they saw and heard in daily life. If it weren't for the fact that Hall preferred mature and stable young people, Asta would have been prepared to tell some jokes to liven up the atmosphere. Audrey, who was a little worried at first, was relieved at this moment and occasionally joined the conversation.
Only Earl Hall tasted the food quietly without speaking. After a while, Earl Hall got up and left first, and Asta also put down his knife and fork. Hibbert smiled and said, Asta, don't be so restrained. Our Earl Hall always leaves early to leave space for us young people to communicate. Countess Hall also stopped eating, but she did not leave the table. She also smiled and said, You are the guest tonight. Everything is based on your wishes. Thank you for your hospitality. Asta just finished the food on his plate and stopped eating. He was not used to letting others wait, which would be very impolite.
After dinner, Hibbert signaled the maid standing by to take the food off the table. Hibbert invited, Asta, do you mind chatting with our Countess Hall? It's my honor. Asta got up and followed Hibbert, Countess Hall, and Audrey to the garden behind the villa. On the second floor, the real audience Susie watched Asta and others leave, stood up from the ground, shook her body, and followed to the back garden. Under the crimson moonlight, the garden, which was already full of flowers, was now covered with a layer of light red gauze, which made it look even more beautiful. In the small pavilion in the garden, Bert and Asta sat on one side, and Audrey sat on the other side with Countess Hall's arm around her. Without Count Hall present, Hibbert and Audrey seemed much more relaxed, and Asta also thought that this atmosphere was very good. Hibbert glanced at Audrey, thought for a while and said, Asta, how did you meet my sister? At the party organized by Growlant, Miss Audrey was also invited. I had the honor to chat with her for a few words. Later, I met her several times at Growlant's place, and we really became familiar with each other. Asta answered honestly, and there was no need for him to lie on this issue. My sister has caused you a lot of trouble, right? Why does this sound a bit strange? Asta thought for a moment and said honestly. Miss Audrey is very smart and elegant. In many ways. I am the one who makes Miss Audrey worry extra. Really? Before Asta answered, Audrey pretended to complain. My dear brother, you don't seem to trust your lovely sister very much. It is because of my understanding and trust in you that I have such doubts. Hibbert's answer made Audrey gently shake Countess Hall's arm and said coquettishly, My dearest and fair Countess Hall, you should give your daughter a fair trial, right? Countess Hall smiled and patted Audrey's little hand. Of course, my Audrey has always been my most proud daughter. She is excellent and perfect in all aspects. Countess Hall, your vision is as wise as ever. Audrey glanced at Hibbert with great pride. When she caught a glimpse of Asta's surprised expression, her cheeks were slightly hot. She actually forgot that Mr. Hastur was still by her side. The Audrey who was acting cute just now would definitely break the elegant and generous image in Mr. Hastur's mind, right? Hastur said nothing. He was indeed a little surprised, but what surprised him was not that Audrey still had a cute side, but that he felt that the family atmosphere of Count Hall was really good. Perhaps only such a happy and free family atmosphere can cultivate a simple and kind noble girl like Audrey. The reason why Audrey is the most dazzling gem in Backland is that she has been carved just right since she was born. As she grows up, the dazzling light of the gem naturally begins to shine throughout Backland. After talking for a while, Hibbert left on the pretext of leaving Hastur with Countess Hall and Audrey. Without Hibbert present, Audrey was much more relaxed. With a faint smile on her face,
sometimes communicating with Hasta, and sometimes telling Countess Hall some interesting things that happened when she met with Hasta, Grallant and others. For example, the little golden retriever in Glint can do backflips, is very smart, and can understand human language. In the distance, Susie, quietly hiding under the flowers, turned sideways disdainfully.
It has learned such a simple action as backflips when it was very young. Is this a skill worth praising? As for being smart and obedient, can it be compared with it? It can also turn the pages of a book by itself. The book says, "Humility is a good character." When Susie thought of this, she didn't want to compete with the little golden retriever. She was in a good mood, raised her head slightly, and shook her tail.
At the small pavilion in the garden, Countess Hall glanced at Audrey with a smile on her face, and then glanced at Asta, who was calm and measured opposite her, yawned slightly and said,
"I'm a little tired, I have to rest for a while."
Audrey stood up and wanted to help Countess Hall go back to the room to rest.
Countess Hall shook her head and said, "Leaving guests here alone is not the way we treat guests in the Count Hall family."
"Dear Countess Hall, you are right." Audrey smiled and waved, asking the maid beside her to escort Countess Hall back to her room to rest.
Soon, Asta and Audrey were alone in the pavilion. "Mr. Asta, are you satisfied with the dessert tonight?"
"It's very good. I'm thinking of poaching one of your chefs back."
"That's probably difficult. Every chef is a valuable asset to our family."
"It seems that I don't have this good fortune." Asta also understood that for a chef in a noble family, loyalty often comes first.
Once a chef who is not loyal enough is bribed by hostile forces, it is easy for him to poison the food. "Mr. Asta can come to our house often." Audrey provided Asta with a solution.
"It's my honor." Audrey sighed. "Oh, it turns out that Mr. Asta can compromise with desserts."
"This is the price of wanting to taste delicious food." "Will Mr. Asta cook some delicious food himself?" "I will when I'm alone, because I will really starve to death if I don't do it myself. Now I won't, because I'm too lazy to do it." "This is too real. How is Miss Audrey's cooking class?"
Audrey was silent for a while, blinked and smiled. "Mr. Asta, I'll take you to visit the garden, but it's too boring to sit like this."
Asta was a little surprised. Isn't Audrey good at cooking?
But with her intelligence, it shouldn't be difficult for her to master cooking skills, right?
Asta didn't ask any more questions, because it would be impolite to ask again. He accepted Audrey's invitation and followed her to visit the garden.
The back garden of Earl Hall's house is so large that you can't see the border at a glance. According to Audrey, there are more than 10 gardening workers in their family.
Under the crimson moonlight, the garden path paved with white pebbles is full of flowers on both sides. Asta and Audrey walked side by side while talking. When they walked most of the way, Asta suddenly stopped, and his smiling face had a bit of a strange expression. "This scene seems familiar. Have I seen it somewhere before?"
Asta thought about it and finally remembered that he had seen a picture in advance in the Hall of Stars by peeping into fate. The painting is similar to the current situation, and the surrounding scenery is also very similar.
The only difference is that Earl Hall has not appeared in this scroll yet.
Asta breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the hell picture did not come true.
"Mr. Asta, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell?" Audrey saw that Asta's face was not right, so she subconsciously moved closer to see what happened to Asta. "I'm fine. I just suddenly remembered something unpleasant." "Woof." As soon as Asta finished explaining, Susie, who had been watching from a distance, called out. Asta and Audrey subconsciously looked towards the source of the sound. Earl Hall was standing at the end of the cobblestones, looking at their direction from a distance. Click! Asta's heart beat violently, and his expression almost froze. Fortunately, his current chi cultivation skills were not bad, and he did not show any panic expression when he was caught. He just looked calm and calm. Selfless people are fearless. He and Audrey are just ordinary friends. Even if the so-called hell picture was formed, it was just a coincidence and did not mean anything.
Audrey smiled and waved in the direction of Earl Hall, looking very innocent and cute. "Mr. Asta, let's go over there." "Yes, okay." Asta followed Audrey along the cobblestone road to where Earl Hall was.
They still walked side by side, but the distance between their shoulders was about half a meter, a very normal and safe distance.
After walking for 3 or 2 minutes, they came to Earl Hall, and Audrey happily took Earl Hall's arm.
Hibbert, who was standing not far behind Earl Hall, moved his mouth slightly, as if he was trying to hold back a smile.
When Asta looked over, he gave Asta a look of wishing for the best. This made Asta a little panic. Although he didn't think there was anything wrong with the scene just now, he couldn't help feeling embarrassed because he had spied on this picture of hell last time. He came to the banquet tonight to bribe Earl Hall.
But now, before he could start to please Earl Hall saw what happened just now. He didn't think that Earl Hall would not think anything else. Under such a hellish start, Asta felt that it would be difficult for him to bribe Earl Hall. Earl Hall talked to Audrey for a few words, and Audrey left.
At this time, only Asta, Earl Hall and Hibbert, who was standing a little far away, were left. The smile that Earl Hall had just shown to Audrey was also restrained at this moment.
Not saying a word, Asta put a lot of pressure on him.
This pressure came from his identity as Audrey's father, not from his status as a powerful earl. Asta sighed in his heart. Just by looking at this look, he knew that Earl Hall didn't like him very much now.
If this was a TV series, he could even predict Earl Hall's next first sentence. You approach my daughter to take the opportunity to please me, and then let me help you get promoted to the title. After a period of silence and oppression, Earl Hall finally spoke. Why do you think I invited you to my house tonight?
Hey, it turned out to be this question. Asta was a little surprised. He thought Earl Hall was about to become a domineering father who loved his daughter.
It seems that Earl Hall is indeed a very graceful nobleman, and even his questions are indirect. Asta thought for a while and said, because I am too close to Miss Audrey, I deliberately invited me to my house. One is to see what kind of person I am, and the other is to make me face reality and reduce my contact with Miss Audrey. Before Earl Hall said anything, Asta smiled and changed the subject. If it was an ordinary noble, he would think so. But the person standing in front of me is Earl Hall, a powerful noble in front of the king. His mind and demeanor are not comparable to ordinary nobles. Just as I believe in Miss Audrey, Earl Hall also believes in his daughter. Earl Hall's expression did not change, and he said lightly, this is what do you mean? You will not interfere with Miss Audrey's choice of friends, nor will you invite me to your home for such a boring idea.
Under your guidance, Miss Audrey is elegant, confident, and intelligent. You believe in her perspective on people, and you will only choose to respect the friends she makes, and will not do anything extra to influence or interfere with Miss Audrey's choice. You are a wise man who has experienced the world, and you also believe in Miss Audrey's wisdom in dealing with things. She has begun to grow up, and you will only give her the freedom to choose, and will not always restrict her growth. Asta's sincerity and a little flattering words made Earl Hall, who has always been expressionless, have a glimmer in his eyes. Asta's words were not purely to please Earl Hall, but out of his understanding of him, combined with his attitude tonight, to make a judgment. He believes that Earl Hall is different from Greg and Hibbert. Earl Hall is not a simple and superficial person, and such a person cannot be deeply trusted by the king. Reality is not a TV series, and Earl Hall is not the kind of person who can be simply summarized by an adjective. He is a wise elder, even though his belly has grown a little. Earl Hall looked at Asta, and then slowly said, I am very satisfied with your answer. It is because of my understanding of you that I can make such a judgment. Oh, you know me well. I just know that no one in your position is stupid. Your ideas are different from those of Greg and Hibbert. They will only see that I am very close to Miss Audrey, and then they will make some misunderstandings without authorization. Asta said, and gave Hibbert behind Earl Hall an apologetic look. There is no way, this is indeed his true thought, and in order to please Earl Hall in front of him, he can only let Hibbert down first, believing that he will understand his difficulties. Earl Hall smiled a little. Hibbert really likes to make decisions on his own. He seems to simply think that I invited you to my house tonight because of the matter between you and Audrey. As a father, I certainly don't like my daughter to make friends with people with ulterior motives, but I believe in Audrey's vision and judgment. She has grown up and is fully capable of making choices about her own affairs. For a father, this is something to be proud of. I invited you tonight to meet the young generation of nobles in the kingdom of Loan, and secondly, I want to see how outstanding the son of Voltaire is. Ah! Asta was really stunned. Is Earl Hall on good terms with Voltaire Campbell? In his impression, there doesn't seem to be a beautiful picture of the two of them getting along harmoniously. Count Hall saw Asta's doubts and said with emotion, Voltaire was indeed a very good young man when he was young, and he was worthy of praise in many aspects.
Unfortunately, after he got married and had his own children, he seemed to have changed. He is different from me. After I had my own children, I started to work hard in order to give my children a better future. Through Count Hall's narration, Asta could imagine the story of the two of them when they were young. When Voltaire had not married and had children, his brilliance should have been very dazzling, while Count Hall seemed more ordinary. Later, Voltaire began to change his temperament because he had a child, and Count Hall began to work hard because he had his own child. One has died by the Tussock River, and the other has become a powerful noble in the kingdom of Loan. If I had such a friend when I was young, when I am old, I will also tell the story of their youth in a tone full of emotion like Count Hall. Hibbert, standing behind Count Hall, also had a satisfied look on his face. He didn't know that his father had such a past with Voltaire when they were young. But if you think about it carefully, it's easy to understand. Voltaire was also a hereditary earl, which happened to be the same status as their Hall family. People of the same class will naturally play together. Just like himself with Asta and Greg now. History has come full circle and returned again. I hope you can keep your original intention in the future and don't do anything disappointing, Earl Hall kindly reminded. I will take this as a lesson. People from the Campbell family will never fall in the same place twice. Asta made his own promise. The House of Lords will hold a new round of elections after the new year. I will strongly recommend you to become a member of the House of Lords. Earl Hall suddenly said something shocking, and even Hibbert behind him was shocked. Why did he suddenly make such a promise? Asta was also shocked by this sentence. He hadn't successfully bribed Earl Hall yet. How could Earl Hall say such a thing? Earl Hall glanced at him and continued, You are a student of Professor Wayne, who has profound legal attainments. You will hone your skills in the House of Lords for 2 years. With your legal experience, you will be able to become a senior judge of the House of Lords. As for the title, the Baron is a bit too low. You can buy enough land. When the new round of old and new nobles take over, with the help of Duke Negan and me, you can easily be promoted to the title. If you can impress the king, it will not be difficult to directly restore the status of the hereditary earl of your Campbell family. With just a few simple words, Earl Hall seemed to have paved the way for Haster's future aristocracy. Asta didn't know what to say for a while. According to normal reason, even if Earl Hall didn't specifically target him, he wouldn't help him like this, right? Is it for Voltaire's sake? But this doesn't seem to make sense. After pondering for a moment, Asta asked, Why are you willing to help me like this? You said before that I believe in my daughter's vision. Since she is optimistic about you and comes to me for help, I will naturally meet her small request. Earl Hall's tone was very flat, as if becoming a member of the House of Lords, a high judge, and being promoted to a noble title was an easy thing. It turned out that Miss Audrey helped him to intercede and seek the support of Earl Hall. Asta's doubts were slightly resolved, but soon he felt that this sounded a little wrong. Did Earl Hall say this to make him accept Audrey's favor? Emperor Rissell said this. Politics is not about fighting and killing, but about human relationships and worldly affairs. Asta's mouth twitched slightly. It was another classic quote from Rissell. Why is this guy so present? Thank you for your kindness. Can I go back and think about it seriously? Asta thought about it and decided to delay the time first, so that he would have enough time to review the matter and guess Earl Hall's true intention. Otherwise, it would be hard for him to accept such kindness. Go back and think about it? Earl Hall's originally gentle tone suddenly became a little more indifferent. Baron Hasta Campbell, are you going to reject my kindness? Emperor Rissell once said, There is no free bread in the world. Asta decided to defeat magic with magic, and said calmly, I don't think I can bear this heavy kindness now. You came to my house as a guest tonight, isn't it just to seek my help?
Yes, but your help is too direct, so I dare not accept it easily.
Asta told the truth that he did want to seek help from Earl Hall, but he didn't want to owe a huge favor for it. And this kind of arranged road always makes people feel unhappy from the bottom of their hearts.
The help he wanted was not so direct, he just hoped that Earl Hall would not deliberately block his promotion channel at a critical moment in the future. In short, he hoped that the helping relationship he established with Earl Hall would be based on interests, not favors. Count Hall saw through Asta's thoughts and sneered, "Naive, do you think everything can go in the direction you want? In the face of the interests of the nobles, human feelings are just tools to be used. It seems that you have not learned the essence of how to be a qualified noble. An unqualified naive noble, go back." Count Hall did not give Asta a chance to speak again, and directly and mercilessly ordered him to leave.